Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to today's webinar, Using Public Art for a More Vibrant and Welcoming Community, brought to you by Connecticut Main Street Center. My name is Kristen Lopez. I am the Education and Training Director. And before we jump into the great content of the day, just a few words. Connecticut Main Street Center is the expert resource for developing and sustaining vibrant downtowns and main streets that fuel our state's prosperity. Our mission is to assess, to educate, convene, and to advocate to develop and grow our downtowns. We are grateful to our sponsors and funding partners. Our funding sponsors are Eversource and the State of Connecticut Department of Economic and Community Development. Our growth sponsors are Avangrid and the State Historic Preservation Office. Our educational programs are sponsored by Webster Bank and Avangrid, with thanks to our corporate investors, Penn Globe and Capital for Change. Connecticut Main Street Center also has important strategic partnerships, including our partnership with FHI Studio, our AICP certification maintenance provider. A note to planners, this webinar is approved for 1 continuing education credit. Some quick housekeeping. This webinar will be about an hour. We will stop at the end for questions, but please type in your questions along the way. And so we'll get back to them at the end of the presentations. And when you exit the webinar today, you will get our evaluation survey. Please take a moment to complete it. It's very important for us to get your feedback so we can improve our future programs. At Connecticut Main Street Center, we believe that a vibrant, sustainable main streets are developed around these 6 components: a unique sense of place, economic vitality, community engagement, and policies that support appropriate growth, equitable places and inclusive practices, sustainable practices and protection of natural resources, and connectivity with a focus on multimodal transit. Today's topic on public art continually gets more and more attention as we realize that public art is way more than just an aesthetic amenity. It's actually a catalyst to bring tremendous cultural, aesthetic, and economic value to a community. And as we look at the components of a vibrant main street, it adds to communities' economic vitality, sense of place, and inclusiveness. With that, I am super excited to introduce our panelists for the day. They're each going to share some brief insight into opportunities and programs to implement public art into your community in meaningful and different ways. Each panelist will present about 10 minutes each, and then we'll open it up for questions at the end, like I said, but please type in your questions as we go so we can get to them. And with that, we have Tamara Dimitri. She is the Public Art Program Specialist at the Connecticut Office of the Arts. She's going to give us a grounding in why public art is important and also some really great examples that are happening around the state. With that, Tamara.
Great, thank you very much. And I want to open with an idea of symbolism, because again, just with that photo of me just a moment ago, which happened to have like that blurred little corner, that was just my thumbprint of my son. And it was a moment that, he captured taking the photo of me. And I decided to go ahead and use it for my LinkedIn profile, just because, again, it has that subtle reminder of just humanizing us and connecting us to the people that we love. And so, yes, there's this little blurred corner. It's an imperfection, but it's those little subtle things that just really have meaning in our lives. So I just actually wanted to open with that quick take in order for us to be thinking in context of symbolism, because that is a lot of what the arts experiences are going to bring to our lives. So my name is Tamara Dimitri with the Connecticut Office of the Arts, and we are a state agency within the Department of state office within the Department of Economic and Community Development, which is a state agency. So it's a beautiful little sort of partnership where we're able to bring the arts into a bigger, deeper conversation around community and economic focus. Next slide, please. So what I'm going to bring here with you is a little bit of statistics, because I think it is important to help ground with statistics. However, I did realize that the numbers associated with this particular slide are a little bit outdated. The good news is that what we're looking at, the updated version of these numbers have actually increased. So we're looking at more like 69% of the public believes that arts will lift up everyday experiences, that 73% feel that the arts create that pure pleasure and experience in our lives, and that 81% believe that the arts are a positive experience in a troubled world. So we are seeing that growth moving upward in the way that the public opinion sort of experiences the arts in our communities. Next slide, please. So I wanted to bring forth this image. This is Willimantic, Connecticut. And there's a number of people who truly value the Frog Bridge. Willimantic has also become a community that has been known for its frogs. And the frogs are embedded in so much of the fabric of everyday life within Willimantic. It began as a simple bridge. And the community actually stood up and spoke up and said that we want something more than just a bridge. And it was through that process of the community coming forward and speaking to the Department of Transportation that they were able to obtain a bridge that truly has a significance to the community that incorporates art as part of that infrastructure. Next slide, please. So when we look at public opinion surveys, we do see that there is great support for including public art in our parks, our downtowns, our public spaces. We also see great desire to include arts experiences in various aspects of our lives, whether it's bringing it in for, to increase to be able to improve a blighted neighborhood or to increase tourism. There is definitely an interest in including government funding for the arts. Next slide. So this particular piece is commissioned through our Percent for Art program, and it is located at Norwalk Community College. Again, thinking about the aspect of bringing public art experiences into our public spaces, this is a steaming teacup. It is actually mist, so it is not a heated element, but it will spew and bring up mist on occasion. It is a beautiful kind of public element that it just creates an ambiance through a pedestrian experience. We have several pieces that have been commissioned around different community college campuses and our state universities. Next slide. This was a mural that was commissioned as part of a grant opportunity. And what I want to do is I want to be able to think beyond the paint of murals, the sculptural elements. This particular piece is based on with the use of water. So it is actually activated when it rains. And it was a temporary piece, so it has worn away over the years. It no longer is as vibrant as it was when it was first installed, but it gives you a sense of what artists can do when they're given a platform to kind of run forward with. Next slide. What I want to be able to share with this particular slide is that, again, here was an opportunity where a community was looking to renovate a train station. And through the funding that was allocated for federal funds to enhance the station, they were able to tap into additional funding that would support public art experiences throughout the train station. So this particular piece was commissioned by a local artist who was deeply investigating the fashion industry across Norwalk and brought this particular piece into the train station. Next slide. And then I wanted to just touch on the fun. So public art can engage in so many different ways, and we can take and look at some of the serious histories within a community, but also take little opportunities to create a spark a little bit of fun, a little bit of character. And so artists, when given the platform, can truly create some amazing things for us. Next slide. And with this, 99% of CEOs believe that cultural activities in an area are important when considering a new location. So it is something that is absolutely valuable for us to be considering when we're looking into public spaces. If we're looking to attract companies to come into communities, this is what they're looking for. Some of our presenters are going to be also sharing some other stories and other experiences about what public art is bringing to our spaces. And it is something that the community is sorely seeking. Next slide, please. So at the Connecticut Office of the Arts, we do administer a Percent for Art program that brings the arts experiences into Connecticut community colleges, state universities, and other publicly accessible state buildings. We also administer grant programs that provide opportunities for artists as well as municipalities, arts organizations to approach and bring public art experiences, into their communities. I will also touch on we administer a program which is the AIR Collaborative as well as cultural districts. And both of those programs provide great opportunities for municipalities to empower community members to engage in deeper conversations that enliven spaces. So again, I do apologize. Whenever I get into these speaking moments, I'm still recovering from COVID, so I'm having a little bit of voice cracks, and so I apologize for that. But if there are opportunities that you want to reach out and learn more about our grant offerings, as well as our AIR Collaborative program and cultural districts, you can reach out by email and also visit our website. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tamara. That's amazing to see some of the great public art that has been around the state and hearing those grounding kind of statistics of the importance of public art. And we'll be sure to also include links in our webinar recap notes of all those great programs that Tamara had mentioned. And so with that, I'm going to bring up our next speaker, Matt Conway. He is the founder and executive director of the Rise Up Group Incorporated. He'll be sharing some of the great work that his organization does and what they've been doing around the state. Matt?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everybody. So Rise Up's mission is empowering communities to imagine new possibilities. We were founded in 2012 as a youth development and mentoring program. And one of the big parts of our organization was having the kids give back to their community. And in 2015, the group of youth we were working with wanted to do a large-scale mural in downtown Hartford. When we started the planning with the kids, we realized there weren't many resources out there currently to support public art, to fund public art, or like a roadmap to reach out to public artists locally. So through our first mural in 2015, we learned a lot. We, worked with a building owner. We raised private funding to make the mural happen. And we contracted with 5 Hartford-based graffiti artists to make this transformational, wall come to life. After that first mural, we started getting a lot of outreach from other organizations and companies wanting to partner with us to make more murals happen, including Cirque du Soleil, the international circus company. So over the next couple of years, we, maybe put up 2 to 3 community-based murals every year, working with Hartford-based artists. And then during the pandemic, we saw this incredible demand for more public art, a way to recover, a way to make people feel happy through the pandemic. So over the last 2 years, we've actually completed over 100 mural public art and placemaking projects across Connecticut, from Stamford all the way up to Putnam. And it's just going to continue to grow and do more. We really found ourselves in a good position with the expertise and experience to help lead communities in a grassroots way into getting their mural projects or placemaking projects completed. And if you don't mind going to the next slide. So we've really built out a public art management program through our nonprofit now, where we provide project management, fundraising strategy, government relations, community engagement, execution strategy, advising, a connector, facilitator, artistic management, and we also have a very extensive list of public artists and professional muralists in Connecticut that we work with on a regular basis. Beyond, sorry, you can stay here, but beyond murals, we have done a few sculpture projects, and we also have done several art festivals across Connecticut. We have 2 physical art studios where we operate workshops, co-working artist spaces, and just open house studio time as well in Bridgeport and Hartford. Since we started doing public art, we've invested over $1 million in public art throughout Connecticut. And I've kind of mentioned some of these other stats, over 30 communities. And, one of the most meaningful meaningful things about doing public art, in our opinion, is the process of doing public art. We're not coming into any community and just putting up murals or working with one organization and putting up murals. We really take a grassroots approach, and we're bringing in over 1,000 volunteers a year for throughout the communities to make this happen, putting together local steering communities in the town that really help to drive what the final outcome is, while we provide that kind of back end support, fundraising strategy. As a nonprofit, we can serve as fiscal sponsor for just a group of regular citizens that want to make public art happen. So we really make this an inclusive process and a community-based approach. You can go to the other slide. I think I'm missing one slide in here, but I wanted to talk a little bit about our diversity statistics as well. So one of the things we really believe in is expanding opportunities for public art for everybody. So over 60% of the artists we work with are artists of color. We've invested over $500,000 into creatives of color throughout Connecticut. This includes our person who developed our website, our graphic designers, our videographers, beyond just the artist painting as well. And like I mentioned, we believe in localized public art programming. So what you'll start to see throughout Connecticut is local programs that we're launching with individual artists and community members. So we're managing East Hartford's public art funding over the next 3 years through our East Hartford mural program, where we're working right now exclusively with East Hartford-based artists and East Hartford residents. Similar thing in Stamford. We have the Parkville Paints Project in Hartford, and also Northeast Connecticut Public Art, which kind of manages public art in the Northeast section, Putnam area of the state. Go to the next slide. One of the case studies I wanted to share is more of our activation work that we do. So the Off Main experience launched in Manchester and has since grown in Manchester and in Stamford, Connecticut. This is where we activate either one-way street, turn it into a pedestrian street for a day, or activate vacant parking lots or lands into a small business, music and art kind of mini festival. So in Manchester, Purnell Place is a one-way alley right off of Main Street. We shut it down every Thursday night in July. It'll be monthly next year. And we get vendors, local artists. One of the things that we wanted to do is create a sense of place. So before we did the street activation, we painted a 75-foot mural all the way down, up and down the street for people to engage with and activate with as they're shopping with the vendors. We have, games, immersive experiences, scavenger hunts, all of that to really attract people downtown. Bubble machines, right at Main Street. It's amazing what these little tiny things can do to turn someone's head and have them walking down the street that they would have otherwise just walked right past. And if you go to the next slide, one of the benefits to the small businesses that's on this street that usually just has car traffic going by, when we activated our Thursday night off Mains, Urban Lodge Brewery saw a double in sales, which I thought was a pretty powerful testament to, the foot traffic that a small investment from the community can make. And the first year, the town of Manchester funded 100% of the event. Year two, we were able to cut down the public funding to $5,000, and we're able to raise private funding from local businesses to cover the rest of the money. So again, these events, because they become successful, while we're asking maybe for a government to invest in it, we're setting up strategies for these to become self-sustaining through private investment. We really believe in these public-private partnerships for these things to be successful, particularly after this unprecedented ARPA funding kind of dries up in the next 2 to 3 years. I think this may be my last slide. But yeah, so we're available to, we work with real estate developers, local economic development teams, park and rec, normal, regular community members that want to see things happen. And we really kind of put together and work with you a strategy to make your community more beautiful or more vibrant from the ground up.
Thank you so much, Matt. This was really great. And we were lucky enough to, over the summer, Connecticut Main Street Center had a little roadshow. We were in Manchester. We saw your off Main Street. It was very serendipitous, and it was really a lovely experience with seeing live painting and vendors and music, and seeing people just kind of flood in and just enjoy themselves on, I think it was a Thursday night. It was really lovely. And so thank you so much for the work that you are doing around the state.
Thank you. And I'll say just quickly with the July Thursdays, we had to strategically move the dates to monthly because July is the rainiest month in Connecticut. So past 2 years, we've been rained out 2 out of our 4 times. So we're changing the schedule because of that.
I had no idea that July was the rainiest month. So fun fact.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Up next, we have Alicia Sullivan coming all the way this morning from Portland, Oregon. She is the executive director of the Portland Light Festival and Willamette Light Brigade. This morning, she's going to be sharing with us about the Portland Winter Lights Festival and its impact. Alicia.
Hi, thanks for having me. So our light festival is called the Portland Winter Light Festival. It's a free, family-friendly art event. And speaking of rainy, it takes place annually in February here, and it's very, very dark and cold and rainy at that time. It's really a citywide exercise in temporary public art and placemaking. The mission of our festival is to build community by bringing digital art and interactive art to inclusive audiences while invigorating Portland in the winter. And our event is right around the corner. It's coming up February 3rd through 11th in 2023. We are presented, this event is a program of the Willamette Light Brigade, which is a nonprofit that was established in the mid-'80s actually to light the bridges of Portland. And it's been very interesting over the last few years of seeing how strongly that message resonates. Go ahead into the next slide, please. So light festivals have really a proven track record of stimulating their communities both culturally and economically, and we have seen that across the board with this festival. we have basically dynamic kind of anchor sites. So over the pandemic, we embraced this dispersed model. So we used to be located along the banks of the Willamette River, and with the pandemic, we kind of shifted where we were. So we moved into kind of the central city. And so we have these anchor sites, these 4 large anchor sites, which one of them is this Luna sculpture, which was a temporary public art piece that we had up for actually a whole month. But these anchor sites have, interactive large scale sculptures, and they take place in Pioneer Square, which is Portland's they call it Portland's living room. It's like a hardscape park in the middle of the city. We have a covered plaza at the World Trade Center, and then another area that's got like graffiti murals all around this parking lot. So these big anchor sites, and then we intersperse them with pop-up art. So it creates this kind of web of art and technology to explore throughout the city. So pop-up pieces are in like empty retail spaces or just storefronts, hotel lobbies, little parking lots and things like that. So it's a lot of placemaking and activation using art where there wasn't any before. Okay, next slide, please. Yeah, there we go. So over the last 8 years, we're going into our 8th year. We've grown really, really exponentially. There were about 30,000 people when the event was founded in 2016. Last year we had 189,000. And then in 2020, we did our event in February, just squeaked by about 3 weeks before the pandemic hit, but we had 210,000. And we count footfall attendance. So if you came all of the nights, then you're counted multiple times. Everything is completely free, so there's no tickets. But we saw some travel last year, but our event was kind of at the end of Omicron, and really a lot of things weren't open, honestly, and most people were from here, but a lot of people came downtown. And if you've heard the news, Portland downtown has like a terrible reputation at the moment, and certainly did even more last February. And this opportunity was a way to just kind of wake the whole city back up after being dormant. And it was really, honestly, it was really moving to see people out. It was very cathartic, wearing masks and just smiling and like experiencing the city again. So we have a lot of momentum because of that. We also have like pop-up art. So these are the anchor sites, and then we have dispersed art throughout the entire city. And Portland's really made up of like these lovely little neighborhood business districts that you can go out and explore. And so the pop-up pieces take place like all over town. It's not just downtown. So it has a really interesting way of stimulating the economy and visitors and exploration, both kind of further afield out in the neighborhood districts, kind of meeting people where they live with art, that it allows us to have a more diverse audience. And instead of having to come downtown, you can just kind of wander your neighborhood and find a piece here and there. And then it also brings people downtown to the city center. So, okay, next slide, please. So it's family friendly. And it really feels like we need art right now more than ever before to heal and kind of process the last few years. Some of the artwork actually deals with the mental health situation of the pandemic and people's lived experiences. So the artists really reflect back what's going on culturally, and process that in their own way, and people are able to experience that, and while also kind of seeing the city in a positive light. Last year we had 135 art installations. There were over 270 artists engaged. Many of them are teams at 101 locations. So really it's made up of small businesses and people getting involved. We have an application process where businesses say, hey, I've got a window. I'd love to host a piece, and then our team goes out and checks it out. And, if it's visible from the street and it feels like a good space, then we do our best to pair an artist with the business. So that's been a new addition the last couple of years, and it's really dynamic. We had a sort of a condensed program last year, so 147 volunteers, but we'll probably go back up to the 250 range for this coming year. We estimate our economic impact last February was around $3.7 million. And that is, again, with adults spending only around $19 or $20 each. Many things really truly were closed. So that's a pretty conservative estimate. And we anticipate that goes up pretty significantly once things are open. Next slide, please. So yeah, really, it's funded by a lot of local supporters. We started, as I said, in 2016 with this event, and it was really, really small. We had no municipal funding at all until just this last year. Many light festivals and other places are funded by, their arts group or economic development bureau or things like that. But we only recently have started to get support from those things. Mostly what our support has been made up of is small companies or local companies that kind of readily see the value. Lots of architecture firms really get what we're doing and why the placemaking is important, things like that. So, we're growing a lot right now, but the funding comes from local partners and also just individuals. We have, donation teams of volunteers going around with QR codes on site, and people give, $5 or $20 here and there. And all of that goes to produce the event, pay our artists. It's really important, of course, to pay our artists. At the beginning, we didn't have the money all the time to do that. But as we grow, that's a major priority. And, to connect with, diverse makers and vendors as well is a major priority of ours. Yeah, next slide. Yeah, and also a lot of the work is regional. Most of our artists are from this area. And we want to highlight the kind of unique creativity that's available in this region and in Portland, and that it's known for. We're really poised for a lot of future growth. I think I can see this event becoming larger and larger over the years. We've got really dynamic, like full-scale building projections and large art pieces. We've expanded our timeline over the last couple of years. First, it was kind of a pandemic idea, but now it helps us mitigate our weather-based risk, which there is a lot of. Last year it was the first weekend where it was inching towards 60 degrees. And so people are out like, oh my God, it's a big relief. But other years it's an ice storm. So we never quite know. So there's a lot of that. But now we're doing it over 2 weekends. And I think that, next year we could see upwards of 250,000 people coming out for the event. And just continuing to get bigger. And, our plan is to really continue to engage inclusive audiences and allow people to experience this public art for free. A lot of the tech-based, almost everything in the festival is tech-based in some way, because it's all digital, it's all light and computer, a lot of it's interactive. So a lot of those technologies aren't available readily anywhere. And especially with no barrier to entry being all free, people often see things that they wouldn't see unless they were at, I don't know, Burning Man or some festival or something more elaborate with a ticket price. So that's a major priority for us. Next slide, please. Yeah, so the other thing we do is we collect a lot of data. We have survey data teams that go out at the festival taking surveys. We, of course, do it online. We've got people counting at various pinch points so we can understand our attendance. They count at the same time at every place, and then we kind of average those things out. And so we learned that early on that it was important to kind of understand how we were making an impact and who was coming to see us. And so that has been a really strong storytelling element for us throughout the process. But yeah, it's really an act of community placemaking, and it highlights Portland's creativity and unique interest in getting involved and play and levity during a time when we really have needed that. And it's really wonderful to see the message resonating so strongly across the entire city. And we're looking forward to continuing that on. Next slide. And then if you'd like more info, I'd be more than happy to be a resource or provide this deck. So please don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you so much, Alicia. I actually, full disclosure to our attendees here, I lived in Portland with the very first ever Portland Winter Light Festival, and it made such an impression in a lot of ways. But one, getting people out of their homes in the dead of winter when it's cold, it's not really pleasant weather, but it was packed. And now, as it has evolved with obviously more people and the operations has it morphed, but one of the things that we hear a lot from our members is dealing with overcoming bad perceptions of their downtowns. And I think, with COVID and everything else that was happened, Portland downtown kind of got this bad reputation, and the fact that you brought in installations into downtown gave people a reason to, reacquaint themselves, kind of establish their relationship with their downtown is really powerful and kind of an example of what public art can do.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah. We have one more presenter coming up, Kate Durio. She's certainly not least. This is also a very exciting presentation. So she is the CEO of Sound Diplomacy in the Americas, and she will be sharing with us the importance of music and to not discount it from when we talk about public art in our communities. So Kate.
Thank you, Kristen. Keep in mind too that I built this slide deck to be shared after the presentation. So I'm going to kind of glaze over some of these things, but there's some good dense information in here and also some additional resources that are available online. So I want to just make sure you know that up front, that as I skip through things quickly, that they're still available to you and designed to be that way. You can go forward, please. So we are a global research and strategy team. We really lead through data and policy, and really the crux of that work is based on our founder's PhD dissertation, which was essentially designed to say music and culture are such a big part of our quality of life and our economic health of a community. And so, but we don't really have a lot of the tools needed to study that and to know and realize that impact. And we also don't have policies in place that are really, generally friendly to those things that we know are good and we know create a lot of economic impact. So how can we be more friendly to music and culture through policies? And how can we make a case for that, those policy changes through data? So that's just kind of a little bit about us. So we have a lot of researchers, a lot of economists on our team that study this. And we really did start in music, but that methodology really is applicable to really any cultural sector. And so we're seeing an increase in clients asking for us to do a little bit broader scope than just music. And so I wanted to kind of share a little bit of those examples for you today. So Kristen, thank you. Again, this is one I'll glaze over, but this is just all of the different elements that we look at when we look at what the impact of music and culture is on a place. And a lot of these things are covered by my fellow panelists already in this call, but it's just a good idea to kind of have an overarching look at this and just kind of at a bird's eye view, all of the different elements that are impacted. Next, please. So we have a lot of free resources on our website, and there's actually a slide with all of them on there, but you can go to our website and access all of this. But we did one of those free resources called "This Must Be the Place," and it's the role of music and culture in infrastructure, because a lot of culture happens sort of in the soft spaces, right? Of like my studio or maybe a festival or an event. But imagine a city that has infrastructure to support those sorts of things. And so this paper is a free resource, again, like I said, and it's all about inclusivity, creating more diverse cultural offerings. And one key point is number 4, we always advocate that a chamber of culture is just as important as a chamber of commerce, and cultural infrastructure is really key to that. And this is not to be duplicative of an arts council or anything like that, but we really have, in the same way that a chamber of commerce looks at multifacets, right? They look at tourism, they look at business development, they look at the public offering and what local government is doing. We really feel like a chamber of culture is needed to kind of bring all of those private, public, and nonprofit sectors together. Next, please. Okay, our top 10, because I have to love a pun, and we're a music company, so keep going. Okay, this is really the meat of what I kind of want to leave you with. So we use policies and data to help quantify the qualitative impact of culture. And so, we understand and we've seen in our work experience that policy can negatively or positively impact how culture is happening in your city and how it supports the people or doesn't support, works against the people who are cultivating that culture in a community. A couple of these examples are when we'll start working in a community, we have kind of a hit list of things that we look at, and this is kind of that list. So what are your busking policies? Are they actually arrested or prosecuted for playing music on the street? Or is there actually some legal way to do that? Are those rules actually available and transparent and shared, so that anybody who wants to play music and contribute to the vitality of the district that they're in, how do we help to nurture that? How do we help usher them in to be able to play music and offer that amenity? Because they really are offering amenity. And the flip side of that is, how do we responsibly offer that? So how do we make sure that we are cultivating high quality performance? And because a lot of communities, they don't have busking policies as a reaction of panhandling or begging on the street. And so how do we balance that of what we want and what we, the kind of behavior that we want to see on the streets? In busy entertainment districts like downtowns and main streets, how about loading zones for musicians that are in the earlier hours of the evening as they're loading in their vans and all of that equipment? There's a lot of study and a lot of work about parking and the availability of parking and how it should be treated like a public utility. And that's true too for musicians that are coming to play. They're going to try to find parking near the venue, but sometimes that's hard. So this is an example of a good policy that can help to support the people that are contributing to the cultural vitality of a community. We look at sound ordinances, special event permits, how is that practiced? We find a lot of times in a community that if you want to do a special event and we start to go down that path as a exercise to see how easy it is to do, sometimes you'll find out that it's up to one person to decide if you can have your public event or not, and that is a big red flag for us. That's a process that should be accessible, transparent to anybody in the community. You shouldn't have to know who to call. That should be something that anybody can do in your community, because it creates a lot of entertainment, a lot of value, and you're going to see a lot more diverse opportunities and experiences offered if you make that more accessible and transparent. Go cups, alcohol policies. What does that look like? If, I'm in Louisiana where we can take a drink anywhere. And so, I love that about where I live and where I'm from, but in some places that's problematic, and even here it is problematic in some ways. So how do we put in responsible and thoughtful, policies around this so that you get the good part of it, but it's supported? An agent of change principle, I'll explain that because it's not like a normal known thing, but an agent of change principle is something we wrote in the City of London, and we've then basically recommended it to every community. And San Francisco is the best example in the United States that's implemented and adopted this ordinance. But it's basically an ordinance that protects an existing venue or facility from development happening adjacent. So in other words, let's say you have a really great music venue, and because of the vibrancy of that area, thanks to the venue, some developer wants to build condos or apartments next door. And so you might enter into a situation where those new residents are now complaining about noise from the venue, et cetera, et cetera. So an agent of change principle, if on the books, it actually protects that venue from those adjacent developments and puts the responsibility on the developer to put in sound mitigation measures to protect that venue. So in some cases, that looks like just putting the stairwell on that side of the building, and that's enough to do that. In other cases, like in Memphis, there was an example of a venue actually getting soundproofed by the developer who was building next door, because that was going to be easier than soundproofing his entire building. And so that agent of change principle is something that we talk a lot about. We have a full team of economists and data analysts on our team, and we look at the economic impact of music and culture in a community. We can look at any scope. You know, within music, there are probably 16 to 20 subcategories. We look at both secondary and primary data, and we pull together the direct, indirect, and induced impact of music or culture, whatever sector we're looking at on the community. We look within a geographical area, so we'll decide on what sectors we're looking at, and then we have a methodology of what that all includes. And then we look at a certain geographical area, and together we can see, get a good picture of what that economic impact is. And we can do that for music, film, visual art, theater, live performance, really festivals and events, anything like that. Our research team does regulatory assessments, where not only do we look at the things that I've gone over, but we also take a look at their regulations and policies, both at a local or county or state level, depending on the scope of work. And we can make some recommendations based on best practices and to provide some case studies to support some positive changes that we might want to see to help be more supportive and helpful to the sectors that we're trying to help. And again, that can be sound ordinance, alcohol policies. A lot of times it's also planning and zoning, looking at public transportation, parking, what kind of grants and funding is available, what role K-12 education or college post-secondary education has to offer. It really provides that, paired with economic impact, really provides a really good overall view of what's happening. To help fuel that work, we do an asset inventory mapping of all of the contributing assets. So you'll be able to see on a map like where all your live music venues are, where your recording studios are. And why this is important from a planning and place perspective is, let's say that you have recording studios spread out around the city, but there's not a public transportation route that goes there. And so how does that limit access to, especially here, young creators of the community? How do we improve the accessibility through public transportation to help offer and make those things more accessible to the people that you want to nurture and support? So that's kind of an example of how these things cross over, but it's really amazing to see things on a map, and you get to see where natural clustering is happening. And then you can then support infrastructure that helps to make those things a little bit more accessible and to help nurture what's already there. We also use comparison. So I worked in city government for a long time, and we always used to say, well, I can't believe Baton Rouge is beating us at doing this because we're way cooler than them. Or, so competition is important because it helps you to know sort of where you are. So a comparative analysis is where we work with our clients and we'll say, like, give us 3 to 5 places that you compare yourself to. It could be in a good way, it could be in a bad way, and we'll look at them and see, this is what this other city is doing and how it compares to you. And maybe there's some things you're doing better or a little bit worse. And here's some recommendations to help, sort of bridge the gap and make sure that the city we're working in is, poised to do the best it can. All of that work kind of gets boiled down into some recommendations and best practices. And again, those are all supported by case studies and best practices that we have from around the world. And we, if you work in government, that one of the easiest ways to get something done is to show another place that has done it. And so, that is really a superpower of this part, because we can show where it's not only happened, but it's working. And that is really helping our clients build a case for getting this work implemented. Okay, this is the longest one, so we'll keep going. So just a little snapshot of some of the places that we worked in. Tulsa, Oklahoma, maybe not a place you think of as like super, culturally relevant, but I gotta tell you, they're doing some really amazing things. So they have an office for film, music, and arts and culture. And they were one of the best examples of using CARES funding and ARPA funding, American Rescue Plan Act funding, for really just jump starting their cultural economy after COVID. And I think it's kind of cut off, but that's okay. So we did a music strategy for them, and we actually just had our Music Cities convention there last week, where we brought people from all over the world there. But you can see here how their GDP has grown related to music, just by some sound investments. And the thing that's really the takeaway from Tulsa is really that they invested in the people that were already there creating work. They didn't try to bring in a big, new amphitheater or anything like crazy. They were just like, let's support and reach out to the people who are already growing this, and let's nurture them so that we can see even more economic impact. And they do that across film, music, and the arts. Fort Worth, Texas, when we worked in Fort Worth, you think of Fort Worth and Dallas, and some people may think of Fort Worth as like the little brother of Dallas, but Fort Worth says that Dallas is just a cover band for Fort Worth, which is really funny. But their tourism office, which is, one of our typical clients, is either Chamber of Commerce, local government, state government. Sometimes we'll have like a foundation, but a lot of times it's tourism, and because they have the most understanding and really the most to gain from improving this, and they really understand that their music offering or their cultural offering is a cultural product. It's the thing, everything else is just sales, right? But if you're not investing in the development of the cultural product, then you're going to attract people there, but then you're going to lose them. And so if you always have something new and interesting happening, that's how you can support that. So they really double down on music. And if you don't know, Texas has the best, it may be the only, but the best statewide music community program. And so they call it the Texas Music Friendly Communities. And what they do is they have a state music officer, a Texas music officer, Brandon Anthony, and he works for the governor, and he leads this charge in the state of Texas, where he equips different cities of all sizes, like small towns, that want to be a music friendly community. And so he gives them resources, and they build a consortium around the state of these organizations and leaders and champions in these cities that help to foster better, improved music offerings. And so they have now a Fort Worth music officer who's helping to do that even more. But they're looking at everything from how their city is developing and through the lens of music support, to improved marketing strategies and telling their story, which is, just a really good place to start, to think about starting to tell your story. Keep going, kind of going fast. Northwest Arkansas, this is around Bentonville. So if that means anything to you, it's where Walmart is. But their family, the Walton family, has been doing a lot of investment in the local arts scene there. And so, for instance, they didn't have an arts council serving Bentonville, and so they helped to fund and start a regional arts council there. And we worked with them on developing a music ecosystem strategy and action plan. And so anyway, they have seen a lot of growth there by following these recommendations and having the data to support it. Okay, keep going. And by the way, this work is on our website, so you can look at all of these plans. And if you have trouble finding anything, just let me know. This is an example of secondary education, post-secondary education, offering music support at the Academy of Contemporary Music at the University of Central Oklahoma in Oklahoma City. And all the things that they're doing by providing a venue ladder, and that's a good vocabulary word to know that as an organization, as an artist starts to grow in popularity, they need bigger venues and they need a certain size as the next jump to keep growing professionally. And so they're a really good example of that. And then one more, and then I know I'm kind of running out of time. Keep going. Okay, Huntsville, Alabama is, again, not like you wouldn't think of them as the music center of the US, but their mayor really doubled down on music. And he, not only did we do a music strategy, and they were not only the first full music strategy that we did in the US, because we've been operating in Europe for the last 8 years, is that he funded a $65 million amphitheater in Huntsville. And this is next door to a mall redevelopment site that turned into a mixed use, basically town center. And they have now a music board made up of 9 people. They're only focusing on music. They have a music officer for the city of Huntsville that works directly in the mayor's office. And so they're a really, really good example of, if you start to really tick off a lot of these recommendations supported by the data that we provided, they're really seeing they're really seeing an uptick in their music offering and the music experience being more positive, and a lot of economic and social development. Again, I'll just share, keep going. This is some data from Indianapolis that we provided, and this is just kind of a snapshot of kind of what our work looks like to show employment impact, economic impact, and the music ecosystem output per capita that we offer. So this is just a good snapshot of some of the things that our data leads us to. This is our greatest hit. These are some free resources that are available to you. If you're just starting out, I'd recommend the one in the middle, the Music Cities Manual. It's really a beautiful infographic. It's not a document. It's an infographic that talks a lot about the points I made today, and just is a free resource for a community who wants to become more of a music city. And by the way, a music city is not something that you're like knighted with. It's just something you can claim for yourself and start to tell your story. And that's really how you can get started. But happy to share anything that I talked about today. Then that's my email address if you'd like to stay in touch.
Thank you so much, Kate. I love a lot of things that you said were really fantastic. And one of the things that really stuck out to me was the case study from Tulsa of they invested in people who are already there. And I think that is a really important message. And going back to what Matt Conway had said about what they're doing at the Rise Up group of focusing on localized artists who are already in the community and doing great work. We are a little short on time. However, I encourage anyone, if you have questions, please put them in the chat. And if we can't get them to, in the next minute or so, can follow up with the panelists as we'll do a webinar recap. Thank you all to our panelists. You guys are doing fantastic work, very exciting. I hope that you guys are really inspired by the different ways that we can use art. There's a question here, can you send us the PowerPoint? Yes, the PowerPoint will be available in our webinar recap that will come out probably next week. But, we heard about, murals, we heard about placemaking, we heard about light festivals and temporary pop-ups, and we've heard about, music and had the power of how we can support our musicians in ways. And so with that, thank you so much for joining us. We have, as you remember, Connecticut Main Street Center is a network. We are full of 80+ members, and we also have professional affiliate members who can give you expert advice on relevant downtown topics. We also have our website that has a great library of archived resources and webinars, and our directory to the Professional Affiliate Network. Also later this month, just a heads up, we are hosting a special webinar on the state's new program, the Connecticut Small Boost Business Fund, which will be November 29th. And this webinar is going to be specific to downtown leaders, and where you'll learn about the Small Business Boost Fund, but you'll learn key talking points that you can use to chat with your Main Street businesses and to make sure that they have the information that they might need to use it in their for their own business. And with that, thank you again to all of our sponsors and program partners. And again, when you exit this webinar, you'll get an evaluation. So please take a moment to fill out the the evaluation, as it's really valuable to us to inform our next programming. Again, thank you so much for joining us this morning. And we hope that you're inspired to incorporate some really cool public art projects in your communities. Thank you. Thank you again to all of our panelists.